beta then, because we all know Clubhouse is a iOS beta only opportunity for people out there who love their apps and everything.
Right.
Have we been able to discover if David's microphone is working now?
Yeah, and is it working? No.
Is it working? I don't hear him. Can I hear him? Okay, we're working. So here's the deal. David had, we sent him out shopping today for a new microphone, Peter. And he came back, and of course, when you test the new microphone, works fine, right? But as soon as you go live, there's no fixing live. So we're just waiting to see if we can actually get this thing to work for him and not. But I could continue to talk with you. Peter, you know, the biggest news of the new administration seems to be a refreshing look at the cannabis industry. Now that the Democrats are in charge of both houses of Congress, are you encouraged by this, or are you like some of these cannabis advocates out there? They don't think the federal government is ready to legalize cannabis. What's your feeling about that?
I think there's definitely a lot of uncertainty about that, but I do think there's still a lot of things to be excited about. There's a lot of in-between steps I think that can happen. For example, some of the banking acts, the More Banking Act, that can protect companies' ability to use banks, to allow these dispensaries to get off of this crazy cash-only cycle, which you think would just be better for governments anyway. It's safer, money's in the bank, it can be taxed, it can be tracked. You can keep more black market activities out of the industry. So there's that, and there's a few other medium steps, whether it's descheduling cannabis from a level 1 drug to level 2 or 3.
Or getting rid of it totally off that Controlled Substances Act. That's what everybody. Yeah. You have to be able to do that, you know?
Yeah, everyone has different opinions as to like what the best thing to do first is. I have heard pretty consistently people feel complete legalization might still be more a year or two away. But I think, one of the other things to remember is this last November, 4 or 5 states voted to legalize. So we're going to get a bunch of new states right away this year. And there's so many states that are desperate right now for tax revenue. Like I've been reading, New York is one of the ones people keep talking about, but even Texas and Florida, I mean, huge states that, some of these states could help almost double the size of the industry if you add in 3, 4, 5 more of these states. And that's happening because of the pandemic many times faster than it would have otherwise.
No doubt about it. And exactly, because the economy, it's almost like a perfect storm of politics and news, if you will. Two things, by the way, I've never been a big fan of. I was always the sports guy, not the news guy. But the point is, they are also struggling at each state level. One of the things that disturbed me as I'm preparing and putting our news show together, which we run right after this show, We Talk News, is the fact that some of the states are now having internal disputes. There's some litigation going on. South Dakota has some people trying to block the initiative that the voters put in place. This is what bothers me about that more than anything else, is the whole point of a ballot question is to enact or change the laws the way they're supposed to be. The next step is to have the legislator come in and do what the people want. Isn't that what a democracy is?
Yeah, it's disheartening, I think, for a lot of the people who live in those states, especially for the advocates and all of the businesses that are springing up, to all of a sudden see the people who are paid to enact the will of the people actually look as if they're standing in the way, or even trying to override, what people ask to do. And so I think you see a combination. You see that, but then you also just see a lot of political infighting. Of every group wants more money for social equity, or more money for schools, or something to be set up one way or the other way. And New Jersey is struggling with this right now. And that also is holding up a lot of states that, again, are desperate for these tax dollars. It seems completely against what's in their best interest to make these things stall for months, 6 months, years. I mean, some states take years. Maine, I think, took there were 3 years before.
4 years, if you can read
Wow.
those ugly fingers of mine, 4 years to get it going. Yeah.
Right. That's crazy. I mean, imagine all the tax revenue they lost, all the businesses that probably went out of business in that 4-year period because they thought they were going to be able to exist in an industry that never started.
Right. And it's interesting, but the main cannabis group that's up there, not just the business, but the caretakers, they've had medicinal program for years, and caretakers have been the ones who've been distributing and legally selling cannabis to that state. And now, of course, they're trying to figure out what is the best way. And needless to say, the caretakers are taking on the MSOs that are up there. It's a tad ugly, as they say in the world. Now, let me just see, we're going to do another test because I actually saw out of the corner of my eye, a microphone may have made an appearance in front of David Rabinovitz. David, are you there?
Am I here, Jimmy?
Yes, you sound great, but you're very faint. Is there any way that we might be able to boost David's new audio? Because it sounds very clear. Any luck? You have to actually talk
Hold
to see
on.
if we can.
How's this, Jimmy? How's this?
Much better.
You like this?
That's much better. Thank you very much. I'd even take more, but that's okay. I'll be happy with that as long as Dan doesn't interfere and say to me, Jimmy, shut up, let David talk. Okay, I get it. David, good to see you. Peter's with us. Why don't you ask Peter a question? Go ahead.
Well,
Hey, David.
Hey, good to see you, Peter. So
You too.
I caught most of this. I think, the raise sounds like it's going really well, which I would expect. Leafwire is a great property. I think, and some of the things you've done with Flower Hire, I think has been very powerful. And the fact you're going to start to get into listing dispensaries, that's probably a very wise move. That SPAC that you were mentioning, SSPK, it's doubled in value. And
Right.
they haven't even closed the deal, right?
Right.
That thing just keeps going up, up, up.
Yeah. And that means that 1.5 billion valuation we all thought was kind of crazy. Suddenly, that's a market cap of $3 billion for the company we were talking about earlier, who the other directory company.
Right, the one that's got less than, in its total history of like 4 or 5 years, less than $500 million in revenue.
Right.
It is a huge valuation, but that means people are expecting hockey stick type growth.
Right. It's crazy. And that's one of the things we're excited about. And at Leafwire, one of the things we're doing to try and make our offering unique is one, so we're going to start off in Colorado. There's about 1,000 dispensaries here. We're going to list every single one. And we think that's important to be a real directory. You have to list everything because otherwise you're going to miss out. It's not just the ones that pay. And the dispensaries are going to be offering Leafwire only discounts on certain days. So let's call it Leafwire Wednesday.
Yep.
If you go in on Wednesday to the dispensaries who agree, you get 10% off your whole purchase. And we're telling these dispensaries that we're going to list them, but if they want to be featured at the top, they have to offer a discount. So it gives them an incentive to offer a discount. And that way, Leafwire members have a reason to come back, use the directory, and check frequently, because it actually turns into real cash for them. If you spend an average of, I think it's, $120, $150 people spend, you're talking about saving, $12, $15, $20 every time you go shop.
Yeah, that's a great deal. That's a smart move on your part.
Yeah, we think it makes a lot of sense. And it also, one thing it does for Leafwire in terms of us attracting investors, we're now not just a social business network. We're actually a place that's driving sales into stores. Yep. So we, can attract new investors and people who are looking at us for a potential exit to see how are we going to turn Leafwire into a lucrative return for investors. Suddenly we're attractive to a whole other group of people. We're a much larger group of people who view us now as a driver of sales, not just a social networking platform.
How many users do you have on the platform at this point?
We're hovering between, I think we're getting close up to 38,000 members who've created profiles. And that represents, it's about 16,000 companies that have profiles on there as well. And it's been, grown consistently all through the pandemic.
Yep. Well, I think the last time we spoke with you, you were around, I thought it was just under 30,000. So that's pretty good growth.
Yeah, it's possible. It's definitely been, we've seen good, as you can imagine, our traffic and everything has been going up and remaining very steady during the pandemic. And we've been seeing a lot of return usage, people coming back a lot more, session times going up, things like that. So it's the online tools are more and more important now than ever.
How
Now I
many,
got to interrupt David real quick because you know another story that has the billion word attached to it was the sale of Drizzly, which was a online delivery service for alcohol. Their sister company, Lantern, I believe, is now going to be in Colorado, in Denver, and providing delivery software to various dispensaries. Are you familiar with Lantern at all, Peter?
I am. I didn't know they were coming out to Denver. I don't believe we've officially passed anything that allows that yet.
Well, no. So this is the deal. Because they're expediting delivery. They're already setting up, and in fact, that story is part of our We Talk News that follows this. It is, and it was covered in the Denver. I got the story out of one of the local Denver papers.
I'll have to look it up.
And again, the thing about Drizzly and Lantern, their model basically is they coordinate the delivery. So
Right.
you're right, Peter, that the state of Colorado may not have actually licensed any actual delivery drivers that would take it from the dispensary to the home, but they've agreed to allow the software company Lantern to set up shop there. So that it's an interesting way to look at it, because here in Massachusetts, and David's been right in the middle of the whole social equity delivery license thing, there was a lot of, let's call it brouhaha. David, is that a good way to describe it? What's going on?
that's probably a very good way to describe it, Jimmy. All the, we've had a lot of drama. We had the largest cannabis association, the Commonwealth Dispensary Association, made up of the original medical, total vertically integrated operators, sued the Cannabis Control Commission to crush the home delivery model, because the home delivery's got a 3-year set aside for social equity applicants. It was how they were really going to get social equity applicants to get real traction in the business. The backlash, the grassroots backlash was so severe, within 4 days, they withdrew their suit. They lost 25% of their members, probably $120,000 worth of annual revenue. Then they withdrew the suit. We hear a lot of turbulence going on over there. And then one of the lead players, Rev Clinics, who had been suing the city of Cambridge, a couple days after that withdrew their longstanding suit against the social equity period for the city of Cambridge. So we've had a lot going on. We've got a lot going on. We just had a case argued in our state Supreme Court the other day, having to do with this host community agreement thing, which is basically the local license. The communities tend to take marijuana operators and clean their pockets out. The Supreme Court, state Supreme Court justices were asking a lot of questions about that as well. So we're in a very controversial state these days. Lots going on.
Wow. Sounds like
Now-
a brouhaha is a pretty polite way to describe it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Peter, I want to make sure I clarify. Lantern did not get sold. It was Drizzly that got sold to Uber Technologies,
Right.
and Lantern is now on its own.
Right.
But I'm guessing that the people that were involved with Drizzly in the beginning,
Yes.
I'm guessing they're pretty happy. And I'm sure in time, Lantern will be very attractive to other investors out there, because it basically makes the delivery service easier. So we'll see.
Yeah. No, we'll definitely be reaching out to them, because part of what we're going to do on Leafwire is, V1 is just setting up the directory, but then V2 is actually enabling people to make orders and pay ahead actually on our platform. So there's a few companies out there that enable that now, not really universally. I think that's one of the problems with everything federally illegal still. It's really hard for a lot of these companies to be nationwide.
Right. Which really and truly, we don't know if it's going to be 100 days, 6 months. I mean, I could predict the Super Bowl, or I could predict that there's going to be legalization or decriminalization in the United States of cannabis. And I'm going to stay away from both, because I think there will be a winner of the Super Bowl, and I think we'll have cannabis reform in 2021. And when it comes time, Peter, I'll be happy to make the intro to Meredith Mahoney, who is the CEO of Lantern.
Oh, that'd be great. I would appreciate that.
And of course, you could go and watch the interview that I did with her on In the Weeds back on our channels and on our social media. So you could even get a chance to get to know her. She's very, very nice. And I love their model anyway. So Peter, it's getting closer and closer to that magic time in the cannabis universe of 420. And I certainly apologize for the technical snafu off the top, but I know exactly who I'm going to blame for that. And it's not Dan French.
I got another prize.
We'll talk about showing up for the show 30 seconds before you go live or 5 minutes before you go live. But that's another lesson that's learned, and that's what this is all about. Peter Vogel from Leafwire, you've become a friend and a regular, and I really appreciate that. We love your service and your platform as well. And by all means, again, how do people find out about your crowdfunding?
Yes, thanks for giving me a chance to provide that, Jimmy. So you can go to Seed Invest, and that's seed like the plant, not related to cannabis. They actually have all sorts of different companies, artificial intelligence, robotics, etc. But it's seedinvest.com, and you can browse. There's about 12 companies fundraising. We're one of them. And like I said, we're close to about 70% done. So if you're interested, save your spot. It's your chance right now to own a piece of Leafwire. This is, we haven't done this kind of public raise before, and I don't know if we will again. So if you're interested, please check us out at Seed Invest. And there's also a discussion board there, so you can always post questions that I'll answer.
There you go. Seed Invest is where you go, and that's SEEDINVEST.com. I win the spelling bee. All right, Peter Vogel, it's 420. Thank you so much. It's time for us to take our 420 break. That's when I explain how 420 all started. And it started with the group of high school kids at San Rafael, California. They called themselves the Waldos. They would pick a statue across the street, the Louis Pasteur statue, where they would meet, catch a little buzz after school. And then the cannabis community embraced it because it was law enforcement that picked up on the fact that this was a routine activity of public consumption of cannabis. And this was back in 1971. So they used it obviously as a way to use that code 420 of public consumption of cannabis going on. The cannabis community since has embraced it. They celebrate the date, April 20th. We celebrate the time, 420. We'll be back with more after you hear from Jonathan Edwards singing one of my favorite songs, Shanty. Don't go away.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm gonna sit down in my rented car, I'm gonna jam it into drive. Gonna head on out and play at WSCA with Sean, I'm glad I'm alive. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Every night and day, we're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God. Thank God Jonathan Edwards is joining us live in the WSCA studios.
All right, welcome back to Cannabis Chat Live for Friday afternoon. This show, I'm going to make a major announcement. We're actually going to kind of reject and get rid of Cannabis Chat Live, and we're going to embrace the Green Rush, the business of cannabis with David Rabinovitz. We're going to embrace that name, just like I embrace my friendship with David. Did you like the way I did that, David? Anyway.
Get him out of here.
I can't wait. But we're joined by two friends of ours from Revolutionary Clinics in Cambridge and in Somerville, two locations in Cambridge, Andrew Elk and Tatiana Noriega. Tatiana has the title of Talent Acquisition, and Andrew has the talent has the title, I believe, Director of Training and Education now. Is that official?
Yes, that is very soon to be official, Jimmy. Thank you.
Oh, I just made it official. So there you go. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
What we want to talk about on this show, and coming up in that final hour, we've got some real heavy hitters from around the nation coming on to talk about the business of cannabis education. Because while you offer it to your patients that come in to your medical dispensaries, there are plenty of people out there have actually turned education in cannabis into a business. Green Flower, Oaksterdam, Trichomes, Cleveland School of Cannabis, just to name a few. And now there's actually a school in New England, Johnson and Wales, known for their culinary arts. They too are introducing a cannabis curriculum, and we're going to be talking with one of those principals down there. But let's go to Tatiana first, because a lot of people know in business that HR, human resources, is usually the first touch point where you go to apply for a job. So can you walk me through the process of talent acquisition at Rev Clinics? How do people find out if there are any job opportunities at your company?
Definitely, I'd love to do that. So at this point in time, usually candidates are used to applying on career sites and going through what is traditionally known as a applicant tracking system. So you'd be familiar with inputting your name, uploading your resume. We're currently in the works of inputting that. So as of right now, instead, you're able to view what jobs we have available on our Revolutionary Clinics website. If you scroll down to the very bottom, there's a career section showcasing all of our different roles. It will essentially guide you to send your updated resume to our HR email. We also do post our roles on Indeed. They're very easily accessible. If you put in Revolutionary Clinics, we'll pop right up and you'll be able to apply that way as well. I do keep a strong eye on both of them.
I do love how you assume that I've actually gone online and applied for a job. I just want to make you understand something, okay? I answered a want ad in the newspaper to get my first job, okay?
I love that. Think we need to do that next, just, right in the classifieds.
Yeah, right. Do you know what a newspaper is, Tatiana? I just wanted to ask that right now.
Of course I do.
Okay. I just want to make sure. I'm only kidding. I kid because I can.
You read it on a Kindle, right?
That's right. That's right. And of course, Andrew then takes these candidates once they've been hired and gives them a training. Andrew, can you walk us through a little bit about, I know obviously it has to do with the different jobs that you're hiring, but just walk us through perhaps what might be a patient advocate onboarding process.
Absolutely. So thank you, Jimmy. You're already giving us a clue. And so patient advocate, that is also the salesperson, the team member on a dispensary team who matches customers with products, right? So that's a patient advocate. They advocate for the customer base, which in this case are our patients. So the training and education for that role begins with the very first orientation, right? So they have their official onboarding with HR. The very next experience that team member has is with the training and education team. That's me and a couple of other team members. And so first, we're going to cover like cannabis basics, right? For us, we want to make sure that we're starting from a really strong foundation. There's a lot to cover in cannabis, right? Now, a lot of team members come in with some experience either with smoking or combusting flower. Some people have edible experience. Some people have maybe grown their own flower. But even if you come in with a lot of knowledge in one of those areas, more times than not, you maybe don't understand how that product is made or grown or processed or produced. What's different about industrial cannabis, the products that we sell and produce versus sort of homegrown products. So education begins with the foundational, like cannabis knowledge, and then is ongoing. So there's a whole training program that's been developed over the last year and a half at Revolutionary Clinics that really, the goal is to guide someone, not just with the knowledge about the product, but their entire like job career path at Revolutionary Clinics. So they know what's expected of them, and we, the managers, have a real strong accountability to build those team members up, to really build the best team of employees in Massachusetts. That's our goal at Revolutionary Clinics.
There you go. And I love the straight tie in addition to your bow tie collection. I just want to throw that out there. Okay, David, are you ready? David, are you ready? Because I'm going to call on you to ask a question. Are you ready?
I think I'm ready, Jimmy.
Get a little closer to your microphone, please.
All
Thank
right.
you. Go ahead.
So what are the most common positions you're usually looking to fill?
I'd love to jump in there. So there is definitely a heavy focus right now with our dispensaries. As you did mention, Jimmy, that we have our dispensaries both in Cambridge and Somerville. But I do want to advocate actually for our production and cultivation facility in Fitchburg. So as of right now, the majority of our business is maintained out of wholesaling cannabis. So at this point in time, the majority of our employee base is actually cultivation and production-based employees. So there's quite a different variety of individuals that can enter the cannabis industry. So, not everybody enjoys the retail space or wants to interact with customers, but wants to really start their career with cannabis, specifically really in the cultivation and handling of the product. So we definitely have a variety of different positions, anything from our processing technician roles, our cultivation techs, our kitchen techs, and then it just goes up from there through management and team leads. We recently just hired a management position for our pest and cultivation, which we're really excited about.
Good. Terrific. Now, Andrew, you noticed I used the term patient advocate instead of bud tender. Bud tender is I guess, the colloquial term. A lot of people do embrace that, but are there any, negative things about that word bud tender?
Well, I think it compares the work to bartending, right, which is a social consumption position. Now, what we do in cannabis, medical cannabis, is service-based work, right? We are really matching customers with products, right? I was just talking with one of our new retail executives, sort of explaining how different customers are in the cannabis space. I have sort of my own story that was really educating and enlightening for me because, when I was first starting out with cannabis, my entry to it was, wow, what about these incredible flavors, these feelings that cannabis is like creating inside me. I feel so good when I consume these products. But there are people, right, who consume cannabis, especially in the medical cannabis space, who are using medical cannabis to solve a problem in their life, right? Whether it's pain management, whether it's trying to be more active in their garden, whether it's folks who deal with anxiety, sleep disorders. There's such a wide group of people who are interested and benefit from these products that I think you're right, Jimmy. There are some negative associations with bud tender. It's sort of a fun, like catchy name, but it sort of it reduces the very valuable and important work that goes into matching the wide variety of customers with the correct, equally, if not wider, variety of products, right? So I think there's a lot of work that goes into that. And it's part of why we take training and education so seriously at Revolutionary Clinics.
Right. David? Uh-oh, he's stretching his right arm. Now that your right arm is stretched, you have another question.
No, you go ahead, Jimmy. I'm going to let you keep going.
I want to ask a question that is going to be asked quite a bit in the next hour, but I definitely want to get to you two because you guys are in the trenches. You're in a dispensary operation. How valuable is a certificate of education from an Oaksterdam, a Trichomes, a Cleveland? There's a lot of online certification courses out there that are offering education. So I want to, let me start with Tatiana first. If you saw someone's resume and they are a graduate of a program where they had 12 hours, 30 hours, 100 hours, whatever that program is, does that put them at the top of the heap?
To be completely honest, no, it doesn't. I think that it is not necessarily something that we're looking for right off of the bat. In transparency, I don't think that a lot of the certification-based, I don't want to say universities, but the certification-based programs advocate for themselves very well in regards to why graduates of their program should be hired into our departments, into our industries. It definitely piques my interest because it shows a passion for cannabis. So it puts them as a person that I definitely want to speak to further. However, they usually will align more to an entry-level role, getting their foot into the door in cannabis, as compared to a position where a really strong background and actual experience is needed. For example, whether it be extraction-based technology or whether it be something around cultivation. But with that in mind, it doesn't necessarily put them at the bottom of the list either. It definitely leads to some interesting conversations as well and helps me guide and figure out where their interests really lie, especially if it's a generalized program that they took where they kind of took a high-level course covering all aspects of the cannabis industry.
Yeah. I have talked to more scientists and botanists over the last couple of years than I have in my entire life. In fact, I used to avoid botany and science, and now I'm talking to PhDs, and it's just beyond me. That being said, Andrew, if someone came to you or someone had on their resume even a advanced science degree, does that make them more ready to go into the extraction world, creating the concentrates and boiling up the terpenes mixture with the THCs and the CBDs and all those neat cannabinoids?
Yeah, Jimmy, so I think what you're getting at is transferable skills, right? There are certainly both degrees, certification programs. There is tremendous value if, for example, in industrial edible production, if you've got experience working in a chocolate bar making factory, congratulations, that experience is extremely transferable to the marijuana production world. But what Tatiana, I think, is really getting at, I'll fill in just a couple more details because she and I were having this conversation not so long ago, in the extraction world, right? Making these wonderful concentrate marijuana products. We're talking about these big behemoth machines that are involved that are hundreds of thousands of dollars. Should you throw the lever the wrong way? This is not like an Apple iPhone where you click 3 buttons and a beautiful product spits out the other side. We're not there yet with the technology. So that in order to work in a lot of these specialized roles, it's one thing to come in, like, to me, like Cleveland Cannabis Institute, Trichomes. There's some really big names on the list you mentioned, Jimmy, some that are really stand out. But to Tatiana's point, there are a lot of programs out there that purport to say, I'm going to give you 12 to 15 to 30 hours on coursework related to extractions and retail. And what I would say to that is that, okay, retail in Colorado works differently than retail in California works differently than retail in Massachusetts works differently than retail in Rhode Island. So you tell me that you've got a generalized program, and I'll tell you, we don't have generalized cannabis legalization in this country. We have state by state, extremely specialized, specific regulations. So what is the value of a generalized degree, or what is the value of any degree? Transferable skills are incredibly valuable, right? Like, we don't want you to blow up our factory because you click the wrong button on a machine. That's why you don't get to do that for quite a while when you work at the factory. But there are absolutely transferable skills. Like, I want to say, like, we're not hiring like expert cannabis people for every job role, right? More often than not, we're looking for someone who's going to bring best practices from a comparable industry and apply those standards to what is such a young, evolving, emerging industry, cannabis, right? We're still figuring out what the best practices are, frankly.
You make a great point about the state to state thing. Didn't even think about that, because every state has different rules and every state has different regulations.
Extremely different rules.
Extremely, 100%. And medical programs have different diagnoses they cover and some they don't. Now, I reported on a story, and I'm still not sure it was accurate or not, to be honest, but that'll be coming in our We Talk News. I still reported on it, that there's actually a health insurer in the United States that's going to cover medical cannabis. Is that news to you, or do you know of
that
the
is
Novus?
News to me.
Yeah. Isn't
I
that
have not heard of Novus.
You've heard of Novus,
That's
right?
wild.
Yeah. Oh no, that's legit. And it's now supposedly available in all 50 states. Now, I reported it. I still am not 100% sure of the accuracy. By the way, that's called a transparency in the reporting world, because sometimes you just don't know if the press release that you get is accurate or it's fabricated. What a shock, right? David, you got something for them?
So it sounds like Andrew, obviously you don't need to have that background in cannabis to get into the cannabis, but let me switch over to Tatiana for a moment. What qualifications are you looking for somebody who's coming in through your portal? I mean,
Definitely. To Andrew's point, it is all about transferable skill, to be completely honest. We look for two things. The first thing that we look for is transferable skill. The second thing that we're looking for is cultural fit within our company as well. So a good example would be for our processing technician roles. What I really look for is individuals who've been in a manufacturing environment. It's definitely a medical manufacturing environment at our Fitchburg facility. And so that does mean that you have to kind of understand that there's a ton of different policies and regulations, understanding that, the work can get repetitive, but you still have to maintain an attention to detail and not become fatigued by doing the same task over and over again. And same with our dispensaries. I look for customer service first, because we really place a heavy emphasis on empathy with our patients who come through that door. As Andrew mentioned, you don't know who's coming in that door. It could be an individual who is coming in with an ailment, and so they're just a little tired, and they're just looking for a little compassion. And so that's a number one skill that we're looking for there as well. I think a really big thing to kind of emphasize as well is that Andrew is a fantastic example of this, is that we have a promote from within model, and education is a forefront of us. This is a brand new industry in Massachusetts. There isn't that many experts in the cannabis field. A lot of them are coming from out of state. And so for us, we understand that employee engagement and really investing in them is so important. And education and training is so much a part of that. So as long as you have those transferable skills, those basics, whether it be manufacturing work, customer service, basic landscaping, or horticulture for our cultivation, there's an opportunity. And then the second part to that definitely is, cultural fit. Looking for people who are innovative, who are self-starters, who take initiative. That is so important in this industry. Being able to say, oh, I've done this task, I'm done. We need somebody to say, I've done this task, what's next? What can I learn? Where can I help next? And really making sure that we're collaborating and not siloing ourselves is super important to us as well. So it definitely is a variety of different skill sets we're looking for.
Yeah. I remember being an old guy walking into my first dispensary before Rev Clinics even opened, and having an experience with a patient advocate and it was not a great experience, to be honest. And I, explained kind of what I've got horrific arthritis and the grossest fingers of all time. And I was concerned that I really didn't want to smoke it anymore. And I'm guessing that as older people come in, they're like, I'm not sure I want to smoke any of that stuff. What other ways can I take it? And obviously, Andrew, you educate them and you educate your patient advocates, I'm guessing, on the tinctures and the edibles. But everybody has a different metabolism and endocannabinoid system. So how challenging is it for those patient advocates to find the right mix for anybody, whether it's an older person or somebody who's just 21?
Totally, really amazing question. So this is like day one foundational customer service education at Rev Clinics. So I like to use myself as an example. I like to say, we are all one data point, right? What is right for me as a customer is not necessarily right for you, Jimmy, is not necessarily right for David or Tatiana, right? So when we're selling any product or matching customers with products, I tell all of our sales associates, start with the customer that you have in front of you always. So you ask them questions like, what are you looking to achieve? What has worked for you before? What do you like? What do you not like? What do you want to get out of this experience? Because customers will come to us and say, oh, give me the best thing you've got, man. And well, what might be the best thing for me might be very different than the best for you, Jimmy. So starting always with, to your point, there are customers who don't want to combust. They don't want to smoke. They don't want to inhale. They would prefer to consume, swallow, ingest. And so for those folks, right, you even highlighted on it, they're like, not everything is a chocolate bar or a brownie, right? We've come a long way in marijuana edibles. There are fruit chews. There are zero sugar like tinctures, drops you can put under your tongue. There are low sugar options. There are high sugar options. There are baked goods. There are like non-sweet options, mints, many different ways to get the dosage of THC, of medical cannabis, into your system. And then really it's about matching, like figuring out what the customer wants and matching them to the product.
Absolutely. David?
I was going to ask a question, but I think we're past that. So I'm going to let you keep going.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I want to get back to, you mentioned one of the cannabinoids, the THC. The THC is the intoxicating ingredient in the cannabis plant. That much everybody should understand and get it, okay? We all have heard about the other cannabinoid, another dominant cannabinoid in the plant, and that would be your CBD. And of course, it's the CBD that has been taking over a lot of the country, and some of it, you can find it at gas stations, and we never, ever, ever recommend you buy CBD products at gas stations. The point is, there's a lot of different cannabinoids in this, and they work in conjunction with each other. Called the entourage effect, right, Andrew? I think I learned that from you or somebody.
That's absolutely correct, Jimmy. Yes.
So talk to me about how different cannabinoids interact with each other, and how do you dictate the DNA of the plant as people come in? Because to me, a plant is a plant is a plant, but it is not when it comes to the cannabis plant.
That's absolutely correct. So let's hit on a couple of things. So first, you talk about the DNA of the plant. So how can you know what is the DNA of the plant? So you're talking about the cannabinoid breakdown. How much THC, how much CBD, what's the sort of chemical makeup? So in the state of Massachusetts, we have actually the most stringent testing, independent third-party laboratory testing requirements in the United States. So we test for heavy metals, lead, carcinogens, all kinds of nasty stuff that frankly not every state tests for. So we are required to do that testing. We have no say in the testing. It's an independent third-party laboratory. So every product we have, every product that makes it to market, we know exactly the breakdown percentage of what is the THC percent, what is the CBD percent. And then there's how those cannabinoids work together. So cannabinoids, cannabis chemical compounds. So the way those those chemicals make our body feel good is they hijack a naturally. So wait a second, you're telling me this cannabis stuff gets you high, makes you feel good. How does it even do that, man? So it is taking advantage of a naturally occurring system of pathways. We now call this the endocannabinoid system, but the same way your brain releases serotonin, oxytocin, all of these chemicals, your body has a series of receptors to absorb those. It just so happens that THC is the exact chemical shape of a compound that our body naturally secretes. And so it hijacks that system. So THC makes you, it's fancy talk, psychoactive. So it gets you stoned. CBD is actually non-psychoactive. It counteracts. So if you have a product that is rich in both THC and CBD, they can do different things because they are working together in concert than what they can do individually. So for example, THC is really good as pain management, right? So THC knocks out pain. It can make people drowsy. It can make people hungry. CBD actually does a different set of things. Number one, it does not get you stoned. CBD is non-psychoactive. That means it does not make you feel high in any way. But CBD does reduce anxiety. It reduces inflammation. It inhibits cancer cell growth. It actually has these properties in greater quantities than THC does. So I like to say THC is actually a sledgehammer. It does a lot of things pretty well. CBD is a scalpel. It has a much narrower range of things it can do, but it does those things way more effectively than THC. So the reason you hear so many incredible things about CBD is that CBD has these incredible medical benefits that we're still tapping into, right? The ability to reduce inflammation, which so many disorders, issues, pain, arthritis, right? There are so many conditions that benefit from the reduction of inflammation. That's why CBD is thought of as this sort of miracle wonder cannabinoid. But yes, I could go on and on. I don't want to blather.
You do. And you're very good. But I got to tell you, we all love listening to you, Andrew. I got to tell you, you're terrific. You do a great job. I'm going to put my professor hat on. I learned a valuable lesson last year when I went to an Elevate Northeast, that's Beth Waterfall's group, one of their little symposiums on hemp. And a gentleman there by the name of John Dvorak was there. And a lot of people know him. He's got a traveling hemp museum. He's quite a expert.
We've had him at Revolutionary Clinics. I will never forget the traveling hemp museum. That was wild.
Right? Okay. So he's a character, but he corrected me when I did the exact same thing you just did. You said that CBD was not psychoactive. And he said, actually, it does impact the psychological, your brain. It's non-intoxicating. And he made that differentiation for me. And needless to say, when you make a mistake or you learn something from saying something, and I just thought I would share that with you and get your reaction. You know John, right?
I do know John, yes. He's actually been at each of our dispensaries to do pop-up museum experiences, and it's always wild. And I so appreciate that, Jimmy. Thank you. I'm the learning guy, so I always love to learn.
Right. So let's go back to some of these other cannabinoids. And I want to talk about, I happened to be at the medical dispensary the other day, and I saw something listed, this Delta 9 THC. Can you explain to me what the difference between a Delta 9 THC is or a regular THC, if there is such a thing?
Absolutely. So I was just talking about this today, actually. So what you were describing, Jimmy, Delta 9 THC and regular THC. When you say regular THC, Jimmy, I think you mean the psychoactive, the intoxicating kind, right?
But forget the psycho. Yes, both actually.
Yeah.
I'll take the psychoactive and the
But yes.
intoxicating THC. Yeah.
So those ideas are exactly the same. So Delta 9 THC, people shorten it just to THC, but the THC that you absorb into your bloodstream that makes you feel intoxicated, that is Delta 9 THC. Now that's not the THC that's in the cannabis flower. Now, if we think of raw cannabis plants, that is THCA. Now you can eat THCA. THC has all of these incredible anti-seizure properties. THCA is the most requested medical cannabinoid in the state of Massachusetts. Doctors are rabid for it because it has these incredible medicinal properties. But the second you add flame to THCA, so you've got raw cannabis. Now I want to inhale it. The second you add flame, you snap off the A of the THCA. That's what's happening chemically, and now you have THC or Delta 9 THC. So you got raw cannabis, which is one chemical. That's why when you eat cannabis, you don't get stoned from it. You can't just eat it because the chemical form it is in its raw form is non-psychoactive, non-intoxicating. But yeah, that's a little bit. So yeah, Delta-9 and THC, same thing, but it's very confusing. I understand. It's my job to teach it.
Well, yeah, and you did a great job as usual. Tatiana, are you amazed at Andrew's depth of knowledge?
Andrew amazes me every single day, but I'll pat myself on the back too.
Yeah, no, Tatiana is tremendous. She has made such a serious, I cannot toot enough for her horn for the impact that she has made in the time that she has been with us. Seriously, we are really stepping up to be what we believe to be the best dispensary in the state of Massachusetts.
Andrew, I was being sarcastic, but I'll take it. Thank you.
You guys got that best of medical cannabis dispensary award or whatever.
We've won it a few times.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And but I want to go back to Tatiana a little bit and ask again about the type of, if you have a retail background, if you've worked in Bloomingdale's or you've worked at Home Depot, boy, there's two different ones, right? Yeah. If you worked at either of those stores, does that give someone any kind of an advantage when it comes to comparing candidates?
So to be completely honest, the things
like
that give a candidate, well, thank you. That's what I'm all about. To be completely honest, in my recruitment strategy, transparency is key. So I have the first initial interview would be a phone interview with me. It lasts anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. So that's astronomical and compared to other phone interviews, which only usually last around 10. We make that a very strategic decision because really the experience and where you're getting your retail experience doesn't matter as much as things like tenure. How long were you at your previous job and jobs before that? If you're jumping around, we really want somebody, again, Andrew puts so much investment into our employees, training them up, giving them the background knowledge. We want you to grow a career with us. We want to see you go from an entry-level position to a lead position and then some. So we look for tenure. And then the other part of that definitely is, let's say, using your example, Bloomingdale's versus Home Depot. I might look at what department they were in, for example. So if you were in the back doing inventory, you're more aligned to our fulfillment position, which is pulling all of the product from the vaults, filling the orders, keeping track of stock. Whereas compared to, let's say, you're working at Bloomingdale's at the customer service desk, handling customer service concerns, really de-escalating situations, you'll be more aligned to our patient advocate position because that does happen. We treat everybody who comes through our doors as a patient because that's exactly what they are. But we also have our customer service hat on and really providing an empathetic and robust experience, which means that if you know how to de-escalate a situation, because we all have bad days, that makes you a really qualified candidate for that position.
Obviously, we're in the middle of this horrible pandemic. We seem to be adjusting. A lot of businesses have had to adjust as far as the numbers of people who come into the office, come into the dispensary, come into the supermarket, whatever it happens to be, avoiding crowds, social distancing. Do you do video interviews?
So no. In my own personal opinion, I conduct phone interviews purely by phone for a few reasons. The first one being not everybody has the resource to video chat, and I don't want that to factor into decision. And secondly, D&I initiatives are very important with revolutionary clinics. So it does not matter to me how you look. What matters is how you answer my questions. So are you displaying qualitative and quantitative skills that we've identified that make a candidate successful in a position? Accessibility, and then again, really making sure we're honing in on skill and hiring for that versus how a person is perceived by looks.
There you go. Well,
not everybody has a flashy tie.
Exactly.
Well, actually, and I'll tell you, I have a pet peeve when I send out a Zoom invite to people, and it says please join with video, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't. And I believe you have to read someone. You have to see their facial expressions. You really there's so much nonverbal communication that goes on in the human to human interaction, even though now we're all wearing masks. It's really put a damper on that. But the point is, I believe you need to have that video call and you need to have your video camera on, and especially if you can. And I understand the whole thing about whether you have access or not. Guys,
Yeah.
I
So that's
saw-
actually, not to interrupt, that's why we have secondary
Okay.
interviews. We have secondary interviews with team leads, with managers. So my
Gotcha.
responsibility is to, as a recruiter, I am the neutral party. I'm here to assess qualitative and quantitative skill displayed on application and verbally. And it is up to the hiring leader to practice best practices in interviewing to gauge that kind of verbal or facial cue in person. So we do have a two-part process that does take care of that secondary aspect where you're kind of really gauging, what's your body language look like when you're answering certain questions?
That's right. Absolutely. Hey, guys, thank you so much for joining us. As always, Andrew, a pleasure. You're just scratching the surface of your talent, young man. Okay. I'm just telling you that right now. I say it all the time, and I look forward to seeing you again, pal. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we'll stick around. Does that sound right for later? Can't wait to rejoin.
Sure.
The idea is if you can stick around, you stick around. If you can't, we understand. We've got a lot of people coming up, and some major names like Max Simon from Green Flower, David Belsky from Flower Hire. We've also got Dr. Michael Budzizek. I think I got it right. He is with Johnson & Wales University, and he's going to be involved in developing a curriculum for them. Of course, they have culinary arts in their name, if you will. That's what they're known for. So he's going to be terrific. And then we've got the WeEducateGlobal.com group. And it's Billy Ball and James Lucas. They're going to be joining us after this break. So stick around if you can. And if you can't, we love you anyway. Thank you. And we'll be back with more of Cannabis Chat Live, now called The Green Rush, after this.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Well, hello there. Here we are again, another live stream from the new studio of Pro Cannabis Media. This is Cannabis Chat, and I'm Jimmy Young. Hi, everyone. Welcome to We Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm Kurt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net.
Every week, Kurt and I get together to review some of the biggest stories in the cannabis industry. He and I talk about them. We have a few comments, and then we get reports from Canada, New York, and Washington, D.C.
And this week's no different, Jimmy. We finally have Vermont moving toward recreational cannabis with retail opening in their state. We have an old state and a new state, Colorado and Illinois, both setting cannabis sales records in July, as well as multiple efforts to legalize the cannabis plant in America, including our friend Steve D'Angelo getting involved.
But first, let's go to Deborah Borchardt in New York to check on the financial weed scene. Deborah?
Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, Jimmy. Well, things seem to keep going the wrong way for Charlotte's Web.
Whoa, Jimmy Young, in the weeds on the water this week. We've got the CEO of Kushko, Nick Kovacevic, with me. This guy has built his little company in 6 years from $2 billion in sales to $145 million in sales.
We can get this thing to be fully legal here in the next few years, I believe, but it's going to take far longer for the stigma to change.
I think you guys are the pro cannabis story.
And I love Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, I'm Jody Roberts with Eastern Security Safe, and I love Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, I'm Laura Beener. I'm the president and co-founder of The Healing Rose, and I love Pro Cannabis Media. It's been such an integral part of our success here at The Healing Rose.
And you know what? The best media company out there is Pro Cannabis Media. Look out for them. They'll make you famous.
Hi, I'm George, and I love Pro Cannabis Media. I also love Western Mass Hydroponics, where we've got everything you need from seed to bloom to bud, and then to smoke it afterwards.
Take your Zoom call podcasts or webinars to a whole new level.
Nurse Mark and the
Hey.
Green Nurse Podcast. We are here.
That's right. PCM can animate your logo, add eye-catching full-screen graphics, and lower third identifying motion graphics. Look like the network. Act like the network.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Welcome back, everybody, to our Friday afternoon show. We've got a great lineup of guests. As you know, at 5 o'clock, we fill the room up with a lot more people. So we've had Tatiana and Andrew from 4:30 are still with us. I'm going to go around the room real quick, give a quick introduction. We've got Max Simon of Greenflower with us. Michael, I'm going to mess it up, Michael. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Call me Dr.
Budzizik. Budzizik.
We got
Just like it looks.
Dr. Michael Budzizik.
Right.
Michael's with he's the program lead for cannabis entrepreneurship at Johnson & Wales, right below us down in Rhode Island. And then we've got the folks from We Educate Global, Billy Ball and James Lucas. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
There you go. And by the way, David's going to learn. And that was a great welcome. And he jumped right in, which I love. Okay. I'm not David Rabinowitz. I'm Jimmy Young. Introduce yourself. Welcome them back to the name of the show. It's now the Green Rush. And now let's go around the room. Let's talk. Can I immediately go to Max, please?
Absolutely. I got my 2 minutes of this show and I'll go.
Max, first of all, again, thank you so much for joining us. Your reputation precedes you. Your online program has been adopted now by, I don't want to call them legitimate universities, but certainly accredited universities, right? What has been the secret to getting your curriculum accredited by universities?
Well, nice to be with you all too, and my fellow educators. I always appreciate being connected with you. You know, I feel like we're so early in the cannabis movement. I don't see anybody as competitors. I see this as a big, huge movement that needs all the education it can have. So good to be with you all. And I think the best way I could answer that is just, pure resilience. I mean, we started Greenflower in 2014, as you know, Jimmy. You've been using it for a long time, and we started going to colleges and universities in 2018 to pitch them on the idea of bringing cannabis curriculum into their schools. And it was about 2 years before we really got our first school to take that really seriously. And they, it took about 7 months of time for them to go through the curriculum review process and the understanding of everything that we were delivering. And on top of that, you should know, we're the technology behind the programs, and we bring the instructors to the programs. We do the marketing for the programs. So we had to do a lot to get these schools to come on board with us. But right at the end of 2019, after, almost 2 solid years of effort and very little bit of traction, we got our first school. And once we got the first school, then all of a sudden it really did start to become a domino. And we went from 1 school basically at the beginning of 2020 to 9 universities at the end of 2020 last year. And we're probably on track to double that again this year. So I guess I could just say, tremendous resilience to make sure that this school see the opportunity.
There you go. Good job. All right, David.
What are some of the schools you're in?
So out here in California, we have UC Riverside, state school, in part of the UC system, and then University of San Diego. And as we start to go throughout the country, we have Western Washington University out in Washington, Northwest Missouri State, keep going all the way out. We have St. Joseph's University out in Philly, Florida Atlantic University out in Florida. There's 9 of them now, so I think I've gotten most of them. But there's they are mainstream, either public universities, Catholic universities that are offering these programs.
Now I'm going to jump in and go to Dr. Michael Bodzic, because at Johnson & Wales University, they're now introducing cannabis curriculum. And I would like to know, how challenging was that to get your university to accept a cannabis curriculum?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. And feel free to call me Dr. Bud. It's a lot easier, but you're doing a great job, Jimmy. Thank you. It was a little bit of a challenge. We had some reservations, me and my co-developer, Dr. Magnus Thorstensen, and it took us like a good couple months to get up the gumption after we've done our research and that you can make, a good amount of money in this field, to approach the university president. And in that one meeting, they were totally on board. They loved the idea. The curriculum was well developed in their eyes, and it hit the marketplace just right with all the things that were going on. So it was perfect for us.
There you go. And lastly, let's go to the husband and wife team, Billy Ball and James Lucas from WeEducateGlobal.com. Tell us a little bit about your program.
Excuse me, all choked up over here. Thank y'all for having us. We're very honored to be here with all you wonderful people. Our program started actually a couple of years ago. I used to work for the Texas Rangers, and I kind of got tired of that environment and happened to see a news article about the DFW Academy of Cannabis Science. And I've been a fan of cannabis for years. I'm an amputee, and it really helps with pains. It got me off of some really jacked up medicines. And I started realizing that I think my endocannabinoid system was so on point. It's what helped keep me from dying, because I got bit by a spider. I died twice. I was in a coma for 5 weeks, horrible rehab situations. And once I got out, I was put on a plethora of different pills, and I realized I wasn't myself. I was counting them. Do I have enough to get me through? Because when I was in the coma, I was like, oh, I'm off the devil's lettuce and I'm not going to use it anymore. And I found out it was what was keeping me safe and healthy and sane and, able to live my life fully. So I went back to using that and, just really wanted to research why, how it works. Why do people have such a problem with it? And the more I researched and the more I found and the more rabbit holes I went down, I'm like, people need to know this. They need to understand why this beautiful little plant is so demonized and why people have such a problem with it, and then start re-educating them about what it can do, the problems it can solve, anything from hemp to cannabis. And we want people to know this. I mean, through our classes, we've met people who never, ever, ever would have gotten together and associated. And you get together and you break that stigma with them, and they go break the stigma with other people, and you spread that knowledge, that education, so people can't lie to us anymore. We know what it does, how it works, what it can do.
That's quite a story you just told, I just want to say. And I can't tell you how many times, and I know Max is going to echo this with me, we've all heard cannabis has saved your life or cannabis has changed your life. It's a powerful story that you just told. And I know that there are hundreds of thousands of people in the United States and millions around the world who can say and tell those same kinds of stories. And it's really one of the reasons why we started Pro Cannabis Media, because we really want to have a place for those stories to be told, because traditional media will not allow you to tell that story. It's really frustrating.
Yes.
David?
So we started today with Tatiana and Andrew, and they are with Rev Clinics, and they gave us a great overview as to what they look for the folks that they want to hire. And now we've got you folks on who are educators. So walk us through, Dr. Bud. Let's start with you, right? Because you're close. You're right down here in Rhode Island. What types of programs are available? Like what curriculum tracks do you have? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so we have the Cannabis Entrepreneurship program at the university, and it takes the science of cannabis and marries it to the entrepreneurship business model so that students can go out and join the workforce or they can make their own business. And in our program, they take series of business entrepreneurship courses, but it's not a program for the faint of heart. There is a science curriculum in which they go through plant cultivation in hydro, soil substitute, aquaponics, and all those different types of medium, even tissue culture. And then they take chemistry courses to learn about the extraction process. And both the cultivation and the chemistry courses helps them refine to get that product, whether it's a plant flower or an extractant. So we teach them from seed to product, seed to harvest, all the way through how to make a product out of every step. And even with the hemp, the plant material, we built in a lot of sustainability within this program, as that is part of our university's motto, really sustainability. So we are pairing with other programs within the university, of course, culinary. They are excited about that and want to fold some of our product into their food. We have the College of Engineering, in which we can work with students to design new cultivation systems or computerized systems. In addition, we have the university's hotel to the house or have their own bed and breakfast. So we are really expanding our reach in this business. And this is our first stab at it. There's going to be more programs coming out of our university that will hit on those different types of themes. Again, we want to normalize cannabis. We want to make sure that
yes, we want to make sure.
And that's what academics say for everybody, and that people are knowledgeable of it.
Okay, Michael, we're having a few issues with your Wi-Fi. This is what happens with the Zoom room. Sometimes we all have experienced this during the pandemic. It's helped our patience level, right? We get it. It's fine. We got the gist of what you said. We appreciate that. I do want to go back to the We Educate Global people. It's James and Billy. And James, I want to get to you first, because when your spouse or your loved one is suffering, it also affects you. How challenging was that for you?
It was very challenging. It was an adjustment. I had actually met her after her spider bite, but learning just the challenges that she has on a daily basis from that and overall symptoms, and us being in Texas, that prevents another kind of issue for us to have access to medication and outside of prescriptions and just different things that we can do to manage our health differently. And all of that has taken us down a journey that helps us kind of expand on the education in different ways. Everybody here, what we heard in the prior segment and what you guys have just introduced is so vital to kind of changing not just the stigma, but the mentality of health management moving forward.
No doubt. Great point. And Max, you've heard this many, many times, because you've been living this and trying to educate not just, in your neck of the woods, but the world about what the benefits of this plant are. I know there's a new initiative. I think I'm pretty sure I saw it. Can you walk me through what maybe some of the offerings you have for Green Flower?
Well, Green Flower has turned into an education, campus, if you will. So we do lots of different things. Right now, if you just go to green-flower.com, we have about 1,000 hours of cannabis education online that you can take by course, by certificate, by career pathway, and so on. So that's been our kind of core model. But then over the last few years, we've been now becoming the training backbone behind most cannabis companies in the States that are growing rapidly. And so we develop their onboarding processes, their skills and development processes, as well as their safety, quality control, and compliance training. And so we are the backbone behind, many of the larger companies that are building out their workforces. Then we partner with these universities where we offer the certificate programs. They're 6-month programs through the continuing education departments of these universities. And we have them in cannabis business, cannabis medicine, cannabis law and policy, and cannabis horticulture, which is our most popular program in the higher ed space. And then we have the Ganjier certification, which we just literally released this year after about 3 years in development. And that's very much akin to the sommelier program, the sommelier certification. It's a year-long certification process where people get trained in quality assessment, in service protocols, and in learning how to really communicate cannabis in the most effective way. So there's this whole ecosystem in Green Flower that's been, building over the last 6 years to serve people in all these different ways.
That's great. And you mentioned 1,000 hours, and I'd like to do we educate global people? How many hours of course load do you guys offer on your site?
So what we're currently doing is we run more of a comprehensive overview at different levels, where we've brought in about 12 hours of just the industry 101 overview segment of it.
Yep.
And we then bring in special guest speakers, other professionals, and we expand that for about another 10 hours. During the course, during the actual sessions that we have, we'll work one-on-one with some of the students to kind of expand some of those elements out. And what we've started to put together now is actually putting together our hands-on education portions where we put people into work programs directly with some of the consulting services that we're running. And that's what's going to expand not just a small level program into a much more expansive. So how Max was talking about 6 months, we'll have different levels of internships and work programs based on their experience levels, what other education segments they need, and we'll be filling in the gaps professionally for them where they need, from operations to marketing to all these different areas. So it's much more than just a cannabis education program as well.
And this is Texas, so God help us, they need all the education and help they can get. And, starting out slowly and giving them the full gamut, like Tatiana and Andrew were talking about earlier, letting them know all these different aspects of the industry, because whatever you're doing now will transfer seamlessly into this industry somehow or another. You're going to have a purpose. You're going to have like that perfect thing. So let's expose them to why it's illegal, who NIDA and NIH are, what they do. Let's expose them to the ECS. Let's expose them to all these wonderful cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids. Let them know how this plant works, and then let them see what this industry has to offer and help them find their niche in it.
That's great. And Max, you're right. Everybody, we all know that those who know about the plant have not an obligation, a drive to educate the world about the plant. And here you are doing it now. As an educator myself, I know I teach at the college level. I teach broadcast skills. Can you imagine that? And one of the things that I always talk to educators about is the experiential learning by doing. And obviously the cannabis industry has many opportunities for that. We've already outlined quite a few of them in the lab, the extraction process, the culinary process, the human process. Tatiana, you and Andrew, you're dealing with people walking in the door knowing nothing with an ailment, and they're looking to be healed or helped in some capacity. So there's so many different levels to teach people. Can I just kind of go around the room and find out what types of experiential learning do you have built into your curriculums or your training? And let's start with Andrew.
Oh, delightful. Thank you, Jimmy. So the training program at Revolutionary Clinics begins with shadowing, right? So we actually have a gamified learning and management system at play at Revolutionary Clinics. So for us, we are measuring how long has a team member been with us, what is their ability to actually do work processes in their area, what is their ability to troubleshoot and answer questions in that workplace area. And as team members move through different levels, that generates a score that allows our learning and education department to deliver targeted training advice to both managers, people leaders, and then to carry out that training for team members. So we know basically what our people know at any given moment. That's really important to Rev Clinic. It's something we're leveraging that I don't think every organization has, frankly. It is allowing us to make really data-driven decisions. But it starts with shadowing, right? Like we want to pair you up with a phenomenal human being who is in that role, who trains people, right? We're not pairing you with any old team member. We're not matching you up with just whoever happens to be on the sales floor. We have identified team members on our workforce they are good at training, they like training, they enjoy training other people. And then so we are going to pair up new hires with those specialized team members who they are going to shadow for between 0 to 2 weeks. In that first period, we're not going to expect that team member to answer questions. We really want them to absorb as much as possible, hear how we talk about our products, what language we use, how we treat our customers. At Revolutionary Clinics, customer service, red carpet treatment, white glove service, that is our first imperative. Our second imperative is delivering the very best products in our state. But what we've seen in other markets is that eventually everyone's got great products, right? Eventually, where you reach the level of Colorado and California, where there's over 300 dispensaries, maybe 1,000 dispensaries offering amazing products. So how we want to differentiate our people is with truly phenomenal and above standard, really exceptional customer service.
Let's go to Dr. Bud for what you think. And I think your wife, I know that you stepped out and you got back in, and that was smart.
Yes.
You've done this before.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the experiential learning opportunities at Johnson & Wales.
Yes. So at our university, we have an entire college dedicated to the experiential education component of every program. And we do work within the federal guidelines that allows us to make sure that we help kids get the experience. But the majority of the experience is built into the program itself. Through the 4 years there, you will be not a master grower, but you will learn techniques from a master grower. You will learn how to extract in the labs. We have these small class size, about 20 student laboratories that you work in, and you will be growing your crop, extracting it. So you get the experience built into the program. You'll get to know how to fold it into different products and also how to sell it. The business school, the entrepreneurship school has a lot of educational experience, outreach and connections within the industry.
And then they put together their business plans and learn presentation skills and all that neat stuff, right?
Exactly. Yep. All the things that employers are looking for, the critical thinking, the creative thinking, lifelong learners, and global knowledge, global awareness.
And how about our We Educate people? What are we doing for experiential learning online?
Well, we, during our classes, we like to bring in different people from the industry, like, hey, bring in your bucker shucker and let's get some hemp and show them how quickly that works. Let's have a get together where we take some of this beautiful hemp and show you how to do a basic extraction with either butter or Everclear and show you how to make some brownies or some, gummies. Maybe Nana's ready to try some products and maybe she wants to start with CBD. So let us help you, show you how to make that. And just because you show someone how to make something doesn't mean they don't come back and want to buy some of, the good products. But, we show them how to make lotion. So that's where we have our hands on now. But like he was talking about, in April, we will have our hands on farm with each and every hemp, because it's Texas. But we will be showing people how to grow it, how to, take it from seedling, from soil to oil, and show them basic, again, for people to be able to help family members how to do basic extractions the old school way, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I'll add to that too, is we do have a project that we're lining up right now in Oklahoma for medical marijuana and helping a grow facility get started. So a lot of what we work into from a student base is people that are career professionals that have been looking to start their own business in some form or fashion. They come through our program, they have funds on their end and other resources, but they have additional experience that they can convert over into this industry. And for those particular students that come through there, much like an entrepreneurial school, it provides those opportunities in other states that are kind of bringing the industry together in different ways. For Oklahoma, we'll work with clinical trials and things like that as more opens up. These caregivers need the absolute most education that they can get, because the information can always be evolving too, depending on what strains and what new benefits are being provided. It's an ongoing evolution of education, really.
And Max, experiential learning online. Walk me through what Green Flower does.
I mean, we mostly just have people smoke a lot of pot. Just kidding.
Best way to do research.
You know, it again depends on which channel, right? Like on our web platform, we've invested so heavily in production quality, right? As you said, Jimmy, like we've really put a lot of money into the production quality, instructional design quality. We've built our own learning management system that breaks things down into micro segments. It makes it really user friendly. So at our kind of pure consumer level, we've tried to just develop the best quality, most engaging, interesting content that we can. On the business side, you know, we actually design learning pathways for companies individually. And we've now broken it down into 35 different roles within a company so that within an actual organization, we can actually map out individual training and development pathways for, you know, the cannabis chef, for the trimmer, for the manufacturing agent, for the compliance manager, for the pharmacist. You know, we've got all these individual pathways, and we very much mirrored this kind of reverse classroom style, which is that you learn outside of the classroom, but then through in-person mentorship and shadowing and pairing, you can have that direct hands-on experience. And then, you know, I'm partially joking with Ganjier, but I'm also dead serious because just like in all sommelier programs in other industries, whether it's wine or cigar or cheese, you have to become a true connoisseur and you have to consume a lot of the product. And that helps you develop a palate and develop a nose. And so we've actually built apps that allow you to assess the quality of these products. And then through the curriculum, you have to go through and do it lots and lots and lots of times to really develop that kind of palate. So, you know, depending on which vehicle you go down, this whole experiential learning, ingredient is a really important part of what we do.
That is great. And a great answer. All right, David, there's a great question that is on the sheet. Pick one.
So Tatiana, from what you've heard, right? Because you're on we've got almost like a barbell here. You and Andrew are on one side of it because you hire the people, and these three are on the other side of it with the education. Almost, I got a mental block. I got the idea. I just got to get the words out. Like, what would be the ideal
background?
What's the ideal? Not just the background of the candidate, but from the programs, the ideal candidate coming into you, who would be a slam dunk if they've got the right culture and the right personality, because that's what we talked about around 4:30. Yep. What are the types of educational skills in cannabis that you need them to have for them to be a great candidate to hire?
Definitely a fantastic question. And I hate to be vague, but it really does depend on the type of position. So a good example that I'll use, one that's been kind of common, I'll utilize my patient advocate or our patient advocate position. We've talked about it quite a bit now. So I think that education from my perspective, if I were to look for an individual who, you know, had a certification or an education in cannabis, I would definitely like to see something that focuses on, of course, cannabis itself, different cannabinoids, definitely a large background knowledge in regards to what everything does. So the sommelier experience, to be completely honest, would be something that would be very interesting. And I think just definitely enhance the conversation that we're having with our patients. I think if we were to talk about other aspects of things that I would be looking for, a lot of hospitality work. So if there were an aspect of the program that focused on hospitality, that would be amazing. Because again, to Andrew's point, something that is just across the board, whether it be our production facility with, you know, our production workers, or whether it be at our dispensaries, the patient is top of mind. You don't know where that cannabis is going. So the experience from how you're smoking it, what the quality of the product is, to the person who's talking to you about it is so important. So definitely any sort of hospitality background or training would definitely be something that's interesting. If we're going to jump more into cannabis itself, talking about extractions specifically, I'll give an example that we do CO2 extractions within our production facilities. Traditionally, when I talk to candidates, I usually ask them if they have experience. The answer is always no, because it is so dangerous to do alone, even in the illicit market setting. So background experience and hands-on experience in a classroom, showing that you've worked with this equipment is so important. I hate to use this example, but if I went online and I took a course to be a dental hygienist, but never worked with actual teeth in patients, you wouldn't want me working on your teeth. So it is for those aspects of our business that are dangerous. Like, let's be very transparent. To work a CO2 extraction machine in that process, it can be dangerous to do alone. I want to see that hands-on experience. So those would definitely be major aspects that would make a candidate stand out from the pack. And if I was aware that a certification program had those types of aspects to it, definitely, I would not only want to speak to that candidate, I'd want to take it a step further and actually partner with the certification program to see what we could do from a diversity and inclusion perspective, as well as from a hiring perspective of how we can partner to ensure that we're innovating the industry and creating a universally positive experience all around.
That's a great point, and it's a perfect segue. Well done, Tatiana, to welcome in a new member into our room. His name's David Belsky. He's the CEO of Flower Hire. And rather than take away his thunder, David, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. Walk us through, what is Flower Hire? I'm certainly familiar with them, but tell us a little bit about your company.
Flower Hire has been around for 4 years. Our mission is to build a conscious cannabis community, one hire at a time. Our niche has 6-figure cannabis jobs. So we are based in Los Angeles. We have an office on the East Coast of New York. We've filled over 500 positions in the last several years, covering the make side of the business, cultivation, processing, the retail and revenue side of the business, sales and marketing, and the back office, HR, finance, legal. We recently launched a technology product to help companies hire, frontline hourly workers called Flower Hire X as well, but traditionally have focused on the more strategic roles.
Well done. So I'm going to go right back to you because you're the newest one in here. I want to make sure you get some time. What areas of education do you think people that are getting into the business should definitely have? And what is there an element of the industry that is growing faster than another element?
Sure. I think that I always give the advice to job seekers that educate yourself on the plant in any way, shape, or form, and on the business of cannabis. It's fantastic to love the products, but don't lead with that, right? Lead with, learn about cannabinoids, learn about strains, go online and do courses, Green Flower Media, Oaksterdam, learn as much as you possibly can about this plant. Go to New Cannabis Ventures, hear business news. And then the second part of your question, the parts of this industry that are expanding the quickest are cultivation and retail. I mean, look at new emerging markets that are scaling. It all starts with plants in the ground, and especially when these markets launch and they're able to produce flower at $4,000 to $5,000 a pound, there's a huge premium to continue to open more cultivation facilities. And these are in places that have never had cannabis, legally at scale before, right? So it all starts with cultivation. Cultivation without interstate commerce will be the leading job creator in the cannabis industry in the next several years. And then behind that, you have retail, which obviously is a bright spot in the overall retail employment landscape, considering that, not many industries are expanding their brick and mortar footprint right now.
Got it. David R. I now have to distinguish between David B. and David R. So I'll do David R. here. What you got, pal?
So let's just stay with David for a moment. So I'm looking at all my papers here, Jimmy. I gotta make sure.
One.
Right. So when you're pulling candidates from everywhere, right? You're active on Leafwire, right? Are you working exclusively with certain cannabis companies? How do the relationships work?
I mean, it's a great question. I feel very fortunate to say, I pivoted into the space about 4 years ago, and have always, done, quality work for companies, helping them put people in that, A, understand the plant already and need a good home, or B, have the right values and the right work ethic for the industry. And we've been able to get a large amount of demand just organically through word of mouth, because early on when I started, I was able to build relationships with founders and even kind of the investor class and all of that. So I think our client base varies, honestly, from the sun-grown family farm, beautiful outdoor, Emerald Triangle, California cannabis company, to the multi-state operator, the corporate weed company, right? It's everything in between in terms of a licensed plant touching company, and also the ancillary side.
Now, were you in the recruiting business before you founded the company?
Yeah, I was. Everyone has a cannabis story, right? I was kicked out of high school in 1999 for cannabis, but after I still managed to get into a good college, thankfully. But I worked for 13 years at a tech-based recruiting firm. That in my time there, it helped scale to a $200 million company, and comfortable but very much unfulfilled. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to work with better human beings. I want to make the world a better place, and happened to be fortunate enough to have a mentor back in 2016 that was going headfirst into the cannabis space, and kind of follow that person in, right? But so I was always in recruiting in my professional career before starting Flower Hire.
So as the business stands right now, what's the more valuable commodity, the candidates or the clients who need the candidates?
I mean, it's a great question. I mean, there really is two sides to the funnel, sir. I mean, it's the client side is the one that actually pays money, and we're a free service to the candidate. So, always finding companies that are ready to hire and view talent as a resource and have the money to invest in it is obviously incredibly important. Because if not, there's no business, right? There's no employees at Flower Hire. But the candidate side, I mean, we're always looking for talented people. We have to manage that funnel too, and to be honest, so much on the candidate side, there's an overwhelming amount of interest in working in this industry, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's right for some people. So our real value add there is educating people on what it's like working in the industry, and then the good and the bad, and also make sure that people understand that this one's a little different, and they can keep up with the startup pace and the feeling of operating without a net and all that stuff, right? But both are valuable, but I guess companies would be more valuable because they're the only reason there's a business called Flower Hire, right?
Right. That's right. Hey, I'm going to do a little exercise here with everybody in the room, okay? And this is going to give you all an opportunity to showcase the knowledge you have, not necessarily just about the flower. You can also add in something about the business. Did you know that cannabis, Max, did you know that cannabis blank?
Oh,
This is great. I love this. I feel like I'm teaching a class right now, which is kind of funny, right? You call on the person and they're not prepared for this. I get it. Max, do you want to pass and come back to me?
Let me think about. Well, I'm trying. I've got a zillion kind of obvious things I could say, but give me a sec here. Let me think about something good.
And watch now. I know the next person I'm going to is going to be. Did you know this about cannabis, Andrew? Did you know?
No. Thank you. That extra beat, Max, was exactly what I needed. I seriously appreciate it. One of my favorite facts about cannabis, did you know that cannabis and cannabis products can for different people, the same product could make you drowsy or wake you up in the morning, right? So the same product for one customer might increase appetite, for another it might decrease appetite. A lot of people look at that and they say, how can this be? How can this be so? Alcohol does the same thing to me every time I take it. Alcohol does the same thing to me that it does to that person. I would push back against that statement, say everyone's reaction to most substances varies slightly. That's pharmacology. But cannabis has such a wide range of effects for such a wide, diverse group of people. Because we are generally reacting to a couple of factors, cannabinoids and terpenes, right? So the chemical structure of the cannabis plant. There's just so much education that goes into understanding why you might prefer, say, sativas, why you might prefer indicas, even knowing what those labels mean, or deciding whether those labels are valuable. For me, the most interesting thing to me about cannabis is that it is so tailored to the individual. It is all about your experience with a plant, your experience with one strain might be different than your next experience with it, depending on if you have the same grower, or depending on if you have the same genetics, or depending on if you have the same consumption method, right? If you take Blue Dream flower and put that in a joint, it might be a very, very different experience for you than if you take that same Blue Dream flower, you extract it into cannabis oil, and then you infuse an edible product. I mean, virtually you have the same starting product, but you have very different experiences with these two different consumption methods. So I'll throw that out there for the group.
That was good. Did you know that cannabis, Dr. Bud?
Did you know that cannabis, you can get it to express genes that it normally doesn't, and you can get different types of medical derivatives. So we can play with the genome and express certain traits using the phenome expression. So it is a plant that can be tailored programmed to your needs. And that's what we do at the university, show students how to unlock the genetic potential of the plant.
All right. So did you know that cannabis, and we're going to go to the husband and wife group down there, that's James and Billy. Did you know that cannabis blank?
That cannabis is awesome, and that cannabis.
Yes.
I did know that.
We knew that. We knew that.
We're all in agreement, right? Cannabis is awesome and is the correct term, whereas marijuana is an actual made up term that came from Pancho Villa's men who had just reclaimed 800,000 acres of forest back from William Randolph Hearst. And if you listen to the song La Cucaracha, you will hear them use that term marijuana. And also, back in the day, when the ships came over here with all their hemp tack, they used those ship sails to cover wagons and then made jeans out of them. It's just amazing.
That was great. That was great. And
I got mine.
Okay, go ahead, Max. Did you know that cannabis, Max?
So did you know that everybody from a terminology standpoint is actually using the incorrect terminology when they call them strains, because strains are actually considered to be a form of virus, and that in the botanical world, you actually are supposed to be calling cannabis cultivars, and that each cultivar type is the genetic profile, and each variation, meaning each season, is actually called the phenotype. And so everybody that's using the term strains is actually using incorrect terminology when they talk about cannabis.
Interesting. That was great. All right, Tatiana, did you know that cannabis, or you can even make it, did you know the cannabis candidates? Go ahead, either way.
Ooh, that's a good one. I am actually going to go industry-based, just to be very transparent, because I don't think I can beat everybody else's fun facts. But did you know that the cannabis industry has really changed the narrative around legalization? And then not only that, but curated a space for people to follow their passions, in which being ethical, innovative, transparent, and the positive impact of communities is forefront. So just
awesome.
A little soft feeling fact.
That was good. All right. And now, David Belsky, you can actually expand it into the job market, since after all, you know, you're the CEO of Flower Hire. Did you know that cannabis, he's got to unmute himself. Did I lose him?
No, I think we lost.
I bailed. He bailed on me. Okay. Did you know that the cannabis industry expects to add hundreds of thousands of jobs over the next few years? How's that?
A million. Yeah, 1 million jobs. They're saying that we'll add 1 million jobs by 2025.
He's back, Jimmy.
He's back. I see him. David Belsky, I called on you when you weren't there, which is probably, I get it. But the point that I'm making is, did you know something about the cannabis job market? Because since you are the CEO of Flower Hire, did you know that cannabis, go ahead.
Do you know that cannabis will be the leading job creator in the next decade in the United States?
Right on, right there. Good job. Perfectly done. David, did you know that cannabis?
Did I know that? No, I'm not going to go down that road. I got actually a question for Max. So Max, I'm with you on the fact that I learned that they're not called strains. And then I tried to start to call them cultivars and learned very quickly the regulators don't even know that in many of the states. They refer to it as strains, and people would look at me strangely. But here's my question for you. I understand the strains and the cultivars. What's a varietal?
It's a varietal is a phenotype. It's basically the same thing. A varietal is the season of when it's grown. So for example, you could have a phenotype or a varietal that's the 2021, cultivar, or you could have the 2020 varietal. And so it's just, they're kind of sequences. I mean, it's one of the things that's unique about cannabis is that unlike alcohol or cigars, we don't have actually a very long shelf life with cannabis. And so it has basically a year-long shelf life behind how it can remain in good standings.
And Dr. Bud can go into this way more than I am qualified to, but my favorite story and expression of phenotype and of varietals is when I first worked at my first dispensary, we had a strain on the menu called Pink. That was the name. It was called Pink. And I bet anyone on this call can guess why it was called Pink, because when you bought the right version of Pink, some pink was green, some pink was brown, but yes, it was neon. It was like highlighter neon pink. I had never seen what I thought it was impossible. I thought it was mold the first time I saw it, but truly it was visually striking. I think that's what Dr. Budd, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh yeah, the different expressions you can get from one type of genotype. You can have it express different colors in different tissues and even express different smells. So yeah, with the varietals, the possibilities are endless. And that's a fantastic thing about cannabis, since it was taken from the wild and brought to the closet. We've seen an explosion in different types of varietals. And you can have, the jock closet and the nerd closet, and you get these different types from the same genotype is what we find sometimes. And it's just amazing how many.
I'll tell you something else that was shocking to me. I didn't understand this until these last few years of working on Ganjier, but I've also learned that the genetics themselves are responsible for 80 to 90% of the quality of that product. And it's probably only 10%, maybe 20% of everything else, the environment, the nutrient cycle, the way the plants are cared for, that dictates quality. So you could have the worst genetics in the world, but the best growing conditions, and you'll come out with just mediocre weed. But if you have amazing genetics that are very well bred and isolated, you can actually be just a mediocre grower and still produce some of the most, rich, terpene rich, high yielding quality cannabis. And so the genetic material of cannabis is so crucial. And unfortunately, what I've also discovered is that the vast majority of genetics in the legal market is not very good. So there's a lot of kind of garbage weed in the legal market that hasn't made its way from the legacy market yet from those genetics.
So do you guys know about the Homegrown Weed Summit that's coming up online? A guy named Earl Carruthers out of Detroit kind of did this whole thing. And the two people that are starting off that online summit are in this room right now. And it's David and me.
Who are they, Jimmy?
We did the history of cannabis in the United States with Earl. And, amazingly, I've actually learned a few things in this room just now that we didn't include in that. So that being said, I'm supposed to give a shameless plug. I thought I just did, and that's why I did that. So David, since you've been asking all the good questions, I bet you have another one.
Oh, Jimmy.
By the way, anybody who's an educator in this room, you guys all know the expression, you throw people in the deep end to see how much they've learned, right? Dr. Bud's, we're all kind of nodding, right? That's what the technique I'm doing. Go ahead, David. I gave you some more time.
Okay, Jimmy. So, Jimmy, I'm throwing it back to you. I don't have a good
All right. Where, if you were to pick the right way to introduce legalization at the federal level in the United States, I hear a lot of different people feel differently about this subject alone. I think everybody on this call would love to see it to be a legal plant, a legal commodity in this country. But what is your biggest fear that the federal government will do to the industry over the next 6 months, 6 years in the future? Because we do expect change, and there's been decriminalization versus legalization, federal standards, treating it like alcohol, who's going to be involved. Max, what do you see changing as far as cannabis reform? And if the feds get a hold of it, what can happen?
Well, so I think that the legalization conversation is something that we tend to oversimplify, but it's a lot of different kind of factors at play here. And some of those factors are, whether or not, just first off, if the federal government permits this as a legal entity, which has to do with its scheduling status, or then it can go down into whether it's state regulated or federally regulated, and then it can go down into interstate commerce and whether that's permittable, and it can go into, who really is making the decisions about the regulatory framework. And so I think that, first off, it's a big conversation that we tend to overly simplify here in the United States, at least. That said, to answer your question, first off, I believe that decriminalization is going to happen here relatively soon. And that will just simply mean that we're no longer locking up people for consuming the plant, and we're no longer putting people in jail for growing, small amounts of the plant. And that will be a historic first step just to get out of this war on drugs that we've been in, that's been targeting people for, doing nothing more than consuming or growing the plant. I think from there, we're likely going to see some banking progress happening, because even if it doesn't become federally legal, the federal government will permit banks to be able to transact in this business and do business there, because there's a safety risk in terms of all the cash that's being done there. So I think we'll see some banking reform, and my biggest fear is that it doesn't get descheduled, meaning it doesn't get taken off the scheduling list, gets moved to any of the other classes of scheduling, Schedule 2, Schedule 3, Schedule 4, because that would then mean the regulatory oversight goes into different bodies. It could go into an FDA body for regulation, which wouldn't be good, because then it starts to become more of a pharmaceutical product or something like that. And so I don't think it's going to happen. I think there's too much momentum to in the current legal business environment to go from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 2 or a Schedule 3 or Schedule 4. But if you were to ask me my greatest fear, it would be that somehow they would make the argument that putting this on a different schedule is the right thing to do, which would obliterate the industry as we see it. So that would be my fear.
Great comment, and a lot of people feel the same way, that it does look like a social justice reform package is being put together at the Senate level, which is more encouraging, I think, than what they've been doing on the House at this point. But let's not get into politics. Let's get back to reform. Dr. Budd, what would you like to see? Federal legalization, decriminalization, descheduling, all of the above? What do you think?
Yeah, so definitely see legalization at the federal level, decriminalization, make it a social justice issue, which it is. We have a rich reservoir of untapped young potential right now locked away for, first time offense with marijuana. And that has to stop. And if this administration can do it, that's great. That will help us save the economy. And we need more people to participate in the economy for it to be successful. So the social justice issue is a big piece. And making sure that the government does it. Listen to the people and let the people keep it in the power of the people. Let's not sell it to the biggest bidder. Let's keep it here with us.
It would be nice. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'm with you on that. Tatiana, if you got to pick what might happen over the next 6 months, 6 years, where do you see reform?
To be completely honest, I'm going to stay with the trend with the social justice. For me, just from a diversity and inclusion perspective, that is a massive, massive passion of mine, especially when it comes to the hiring space. So I really do think we need to change the narrative, because even in the cannabis space right now, we've made amazing strides, but there's still so much to go, especially in Black and Brown communities. That conversation, I myself, although passing, had a very difficult conversation with my family when I moved into the cannabis industry. And I think that, that social justice reform is super important, and we really do need to decriminalize on a federal level. To go back to the previous statement, there is so much untapped potential. And I can only imagine just what amazing strides this industry would make if we were to tap into that. And I'm super excited to see it happen soon.
Right. All right, David Belsky, I know you're on mute, so unmute yourself. I'm going to ask you that same question about federal legalization reform. What do you see? How do you see things moving forward?
I think venturing a guess at how the federal government acts is going to be tough. We certainly seem to have a lot of momentum now in the right makeup of our government, but obviously they have other priorities. I'm hoping for some level of banking relief would be my only expectation for 2021 that would make me happy. I think the broader thing is it does have to be an inclusive industry, and it's so unfortunate that there are current states that are medical cannabis states like Florida and Virginia, where they can't hire somebody with a cannabis criminal record.
Right.
It's ridiculous. If they have nothing else on their record, just cannabis, they can't hire them. So we have to figure that out. And we have to figure out how to make the industry have a path for people with drug offenses to be part of this industry for it to work and live up to its potential. And that's a very complicated thing. It's going to be impossible to get it perfect, but we need to all come together and just keep the dialogue going about the solutions there. And with banking reform and tax reform, the whole corporate social responsibility thing, there'll actually probably be some more money left over to champion some of those efforts as well, and more so than there have been. So I think I'd love to see more progress there, because at the end of the day, there have been people sending cannabis across this country for decades, right? And they know how to do it, and they know how to grow it, and they need to find a place in the industry as well.
There you go. Good job, David. There's actually something on LinkedIn about that, somebody actually announcing that they're doing interstate commerce in cannabis, and the comments on LinkedIn, it blew up.
It was bold. It was
right.
bold.
It was pretty bold and illegal, basically. So it's like, I'm not quite sure that was the smartest public relations move. But anyway, let's go to Billy and James. Tell us what you think, what you would like to see happen. And by the way, I understand that you're in Texas and there's a certain senator there. Please do everything you can. I'm not even going to name who it is, but
we do understand that, there are certain politicians, no matter what side that they're on or what state that they're in, that when you see them vote a certain way, do some research on them. Google where their money comes from and where it goes, and then make your very own decision about who's in their back pocket. Sometimes it's big pharma, sometimes it's big oil and gas. It's a certain thing, but do your own research, because our politicians are not listening to us.
Right. Yep. No, I think that's actually my biggest fear. We're all educators. We know that you need to educate the world, and yet we can't. And Max, I see you're going to say goodbye. Great to see you. Keep up the good work. Keep waving that flag, will you?
Thanks so much, everybody. Good to be with you today, and I hope to be with you again in one of these conversations soon.
Terrific.
Yeah.
All right. Andrew, I didn't forget you. And we're not going to, and I also want to get one more comment from James, because I want to give him equal time. Okay. So Andrew, hold on to your thoughts. James, I'm going to put you on the spot. What would you like to see the future of the cannabis reform?
I think everybody spoke very well about the same areas, and couldn't agree more. It's just going to come down to, really, we need more banking functionality, and we need to make sure there's not too much over-regulation in the industry that create too much complications. I think that's where politicians also get hung up with spending years and years trying to develop and put these things into place. And even with just basically growing hemp in Texas, we have an agricultural commissioner that doesn't have any kind of budget, even for small infrastructure. And these are just small solutions that could be easily done. And I think the powers that be here are just kind of hanging that over enough of people's heads to where we can't move forward, even in small steps. It takes too long.
And we have to fix the Texas medical program. And just real quick, like Tatiana was talking about, you get a chance, Google Fate Vincent Winslow from Louisiana and see how he was scheduled to spend the rest of his life in prison for selling $20 worth of marijuana in Louisiana. Just recently got out, thank you, Jesus, because of a petition that happened. But then you can look up the story of Ethan Couch from Texas. 16-year-old white kid kills 4 people while drunk driving and gets a slap on the wrist. Because he had affluenza. He was too rich to understand what he was doing. So we really, the education and getting some of these people from these underserved communities who might not be able to afford college or something like that, but show them they have a purpose, they can have a place in this industry and in this world, and that it's okay, it's just a plant.
You're gonna make me cry because I feel that on so many levels, and I'm glad to hear that that man in Louisiana got out. My heart. I'm from Georgia, so my heart lives in the South. But
I'll send you some articles that just show you some things that are happening here in Texas. I would love to.
I would love to see that because I think that just D&I and just everything going on, it is just such an important part of just Rev clinics in general and just my own personal stance as well. And I think that those underserved communities, again, being passing, but having those connections, it's very important to me.
And I think Michael Thompson got released too. He was the guy who was in for 25 years recently.
Yes.
Too.
yeah.
But Andrew, I'm letting you have the last comment of our guests about what you would like to see the future look like for federal cannabis reform.
I think in my own way, I'm going to reiterate what a lot of really incredible guests who've come before me have said. Diversity, inclusion, what Tatiana's talked about is so core to the mission of revolutionary clinics, not just placing people with backgrounds in jobs, but also going the next step. Expungement is this enormous undertaking, right? So that's the act of taking individuals who do have criminal records and going through the legal process to expunge, to completely wipe away any trace of former conviction due to these drug penalties. That's true. Like right now in Massachusetts, that is one avenue that we at Revolutionary Clinics are really pursuing to have an active impact on the lives of individuals who have been unfairly policed, who have been unfairly imprisoned, who have been unfairly wronged by the system. That is so critically important. And then going to the folks in Texas, truly, I am so excited, truly, to see the future that is going to blossom. We're talking about these incredible plants that is going to blossom all across this country. We've got such incredible success stories to look to: Colorado, California, Massachusetts on the East Coast. There are a lot of different models to draw from as states like Michigan, Illinois, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. So many states are coming online and are about to go through their own version of what Massachusetts has been going through for the last, decade, what California and Colorado went through for the last 2 decades. I'm frankly hopeful that if there is some kind of sweeping change that does affect our federal system, that it is one that will lift all boats, right? That my hope is that suddenly we can look to some really successful best practices from the past 2 decades and lift everyone up. That has to be a priority. And I hope it is a priority of whatever administration takes us to that finish line.
And David, I know I'm interested to actually hear what you have to say about this, because you're usually one of the sages in all our meetings and stuff.
So it's an interesting conundrum, right? I think everybody would love to see marijuana legalized at the federal level. But as soon as that legalization happens, it's like opening up the barn door. Now, think back to 2018 before the marijuana stocks took off. They took off because a large company took $4 billion of cash and invested it in a Canadian company. But what everybody, the $4 billion was huge. But what everybody forgot is that came out of a company that probably had about $100 billion in cash. So they took $4 billion, put it in there. The value got blown up. The market crashed for most of the Canadian stocks. There's been some recovery. But when the gates get open, everybody thinks you rattle off some of the large names, Curaleaf, Cresco Labs, Trulieve, right? I could just keep going down the line. Air, a lot of multi-state operators. They are just gnats on an elephant's backside compared to the companies that could come into this business. So when it becomes federally legal, you're not talking about those companies anymore. You're talking about the likes of Walmart, Target, CVS, Boots Alliance, who runs Walgreens. Those are the companies that are going to come in. And
Marlboro.
The state is going to be huge, right? Right now, everybody is confined to a state. This is the only time in the history of the United States where we've had an industry that's been illegal at the federal level, legal at the state level, but tolerated by the feds with these memos that create safe harbors. Well, imagine what happens to the Massachusetts market and all the investment in these indoor grow facilities, which, when you look at it from a big picture, are nuts, right? Why do you want to grow a plant in a warehouse when it costs so much more per square foot than finding the right climate and growing it outdoors? And think about the oversupply they had in Oregon a couple of years ago, right? which I understand they've now gotten into balance, we're going to find the best place in the United States to grow weed. That's where it's going to get grown, even if it's in greenhouses, right? Large greenhouses, that's a lot more economical than growing it inside enclosed warehouses. And the destruction of capital is going to be huge. It's going to happen, right? But for everybody who's in the business, so I'm a trainer in the state social equity program. So I'm working, Dr. Bud, like you, I'm working with a lot of budding entrepreneurs. And I try to explain to them, you do not want legalization if you're trying to start a business, because once it's legalized, you're going to see a steamroller come through of the really big companies. And what people think, we got the small players who complain about the large multi-state operators or the groups that have raised $10, $20 million. They're nothing compared to the big money that's going to come into this industry. So it's a balancing act. I think we need banking, without a doubt. I mean, the federal government tried to solve that. February 14th, 2014, they said to the banks, here's the manual. If you want to bank these people, you can bank them. And here's the guide. It's like an 8-page guide. Came out in concert with Cole Memo number 3 with FinCEN. And yet most of the banks won't bank it. So we need to fix the banking. We need to do a few other things. We need to reduce the criminality. But if we totally open the gates, a lot of the small entrepreneurs are going to get crushed. And small will become redefined, like Rev Clinics, who is big in the state. Rev Farms in Fitchburg, I believe, is the largest cultivation facility in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Am I right about that?
And proud of it.
Right.
Largest wholesaler in the state, largest delivery program in the state. We're doing a lot right. But you're right, David. We're not even a multi-state operator. Our goal is to be the best in Massachusetts. That's the goal right now. That's not the goal in 5 years.
So think about Rev Clinics, who's the largest grower in the state. They'll be nothing compared to what's going to come into the market, right? So there needs to be something, right? We need to get it off Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 so that we don't have 280E anymore. But like Max said, if we go down to Schedule 3 or Schedule 4, you still have the problem of somebody's going to regulate it. So it would be nice to get it descheduled, maybe not legalized, because that'll leave enough of a gray area where because of state laws, I think the big players will stay out of it.
Yeah, we want the gray because that lends itself to conversation and keep us going with these kinds of talk shows. And that's really would be the best thing. All right, David, great job as usual. You get the prize. You got that's a great question, more than I did today. So good job. Okay. And for everybody in this room and including Max Simon, who left us, Dr. Michael Bud, I love it. Of course you're teaching cannabis, Dr. Michael Bud Zizek. I mean, you knew you were born to do that, right? Of course.
Yeah. Learn Bud with Dr. Bud.
That's right. WeEducateGlobal.com. Billy Ball and James Lucas, thank you guys. Andrew, always a pleasure. Tatiana, who I think is still with us, at least audio-wise, still with us. Thank you for everybody. And for everybody here at Pro Cannabis Media,
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Stay tuned to this week's Weed Talk News with Rye Russell. And remember, thank you. Like, share, subscribe. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Take your
Coming
Zoom
up
call
on Weed Talk News this week, cannabis prohibition days are numbered, and the beginning of the end is just a few weeks away. Sales from Canada's legal weed market moves past the illegal market just over 2 years into their federal legalization plan, and a health insurance plan that covers medicinal marijuana. Really? All that and more on Weed Talk News next.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young.
And I'm Rye Russell from Weed Buzz Radio.
Every week, Rye and I get together to talk about the news stories of the week, and it's been a busy one. Hey, Rye, have you noticed that every time we share a video or a blog or a podcast and the word legalization and cannabis is in the title, it attracts a lot of attention?
You're right, and it looks like that might just happen.
I don't know about legalization, but let's say the Democrats will be trying to make good on their campaign platform to at least decriminalize cannabis. New York Senator Chuck Schumer is now the majority leader in the Senate. He and New Jersey's Cory Booker will be introducing legislation in the coming weeks to establish a taxed and regulated cannabis market. Now, it will probably be tied to a social justice initiative reflecting on the fact that U.S. prisons are filled with persons of color who have been convicted of small possession crimes. However, now that the politicians in Washington, D.C. are involved, anything can happen, right, Rye?
Oh, Jimmy, don't get me started on the politicians. Let's turn to business. There was a major sale of an alcohol delivery company from Boston called Drizzly. A San Francisco-based company, Uber Technologies, has announced they've acquired Drizzly for $1.1 billion. Now, what does this have to do with cannabis, one might ask? Lantern.
I know.
Jimmy, what is it?
It has to do with their sister company, Lantern.
Bingo! Lantern is a subsidiary of Drizzly, or was, and their model is to deliver cannabis. Lantern was not part of the sale. However, Uber Technology said they are not interested in cannabis delivery right now. But that sentiment could change. Lantern was launched last year and is operating in Massachusetts and Michigan. Lantern is now the first in the Denver, Colorado market to get a delivery go-ahead because they connect retailers with consumers online. Despite Colorado's mature cannabis market, they are just now introducing delivery options, and Lantern is ready to deliver that option. Speaking of options, there were quite a few acquisitions on the world cannabis stage. Here's Deborah Borchardt for the Green Market Report. Deborah?
Thanks, guys. The big acquisition announced this week was Jazz Pharmaceuticals' purchase of GW Pharmaceuticals in a deal valued at $7.2 billion. Jazz is a global biopharmaceutical company whose focus is in neuroscience, including sleep and movement disorders, and in oncology. Everybody knows GW Pharmaceuticals for its epilepsy drug Epidiolex, which is made from cannabinoids. The Scott's Miracle Grow company reported that it had company-wide sales that increased 105% to a record $748.6 million in its fiscal first quarter. The company said it was primarily driven by strong retailer support in the U.S. consumer segment, as well as continued momentum in Hawthorne. Hawthorne's sales increased 71% to $309.4 million, and it was driven by strong demand in all categories of indoor growing equipment and supplies. Ianthus stock popped over 57% this week after the company was able to close on an $11 million bridge financing. Now, the company has had several decisions turn in its favor lately. The Monmouth County Superior Court in New Jersey decided to allow Ianthus to continue construction at the Pleasantville, New Jersey facility, despite its ongoing legal battle with MPX New Jersey. And that's the big news this week. I'm Deborah Borchardt from the Green Market Report for We Talk News.
We've got some great news coming from many different states here in the cannabis industry, and we will start, of course, with my home state of Maine, where state regulators say the current medical marijuana rules are out of sync with the state law and must be aligned. Last month, the Maine Office of Marijuana Policy released a draft of regulations designed to even the playing field between the state's medical and adult use program, which began this past October. But a coalition, Jimmy, of hundreds of caregivers who grow medicine in their homes for sick patients are fighting the proposed restrictions they claim are too costly and restrictive.
Okay. All right. That's
the
cool.
draft rules, Jimmy, they would require approval from municipalities to operate, and they would require caregivers to use the state's inventory tracking system that's already up and running for the adult use market. And they would need to install extensive 24-hour video surveillance system in and outside their businesses. So the coalition is saying that these are unnecessary and unreasonable expenses. Interesting here in Maine. I feel like these two markets are always going back and forth, Jimmy.
Well, the caregivers and the medical dispensary owners, they're kind of catering to the same clientele, aren't they?
They are. And you know what? This is not the only state we're seeing struggles. Montana and South Dakota are still fighting for conversations that they've already voted on. In Arizona, at least this is a state that's moving fast. They have launched their recreational program a little early. This is crazy, Jimmy. It's all over the board.
Yeah, and even the established markets, a market that's been around a while and continues to drive billions of dollars of sales legally and illegally, is California. You know, they have thousands of dispensaries throughout that state for medical and adult use. And imagine if one day you happen to be one of those licensees, you log into your email, and you get a notice from the state that your license has been revoked. Well, that's what happened this week, not to just one or two, but over 300 licensees were sent a notice that their license had been revoked. Now, sure enough, it turns out that it was an automated email blast that was tied to a form that was sent out on January 11th. And in that email, it asked the licensee to send further information to the Bureau of Cannabis Control. Now, within a few hours, the BCC had renewed those licenses, fixed the auto respond on the emails. Oops.
If you want to know a reason why it takes states so long to launch cannabis programs, might have something to do with the communication between people who are trying to open businesses, the courts, and the various departments at every state level. In New Jersey, while they continue to move towards opening their adult use market, an old court case on medicinal licenses has stalled the expansion of that program in the state. It seems that there might have been improper applications filed in 2019. The state eliminated 51 applicants in 2019, and some applicants feel like their cases were handled poorly. So what does the state do? They put the whole process on hold, leaving 146 applicants in limbo. There are tossed to now just 12 open medical dispensaries in the state of New Jersey.
Yeah, New Jersey is looked at as the next big market in cannabis to develop, and yet I don't have a lot of confidence in the state government there. Then again, I don't have a lot of confidence in any state government, but that's another story. You know, over the past few years, the movement to unionize employees has turned bitter here in Massachusetts. And over the past week, the U.S. Labor Relations Board handed out a decision brought by two Pennsylvania workers at a dispensary there who were trimming and cultivating cannabis. Now, basically saying the NLRB is basically saying that they can't unionize. That decision states that growers and trimmers, sorters and packagers are not agricultural workers, but are employees. Now, amazingly, the NLRB reached different conclusions in similar cases in 2013 and 2015. And the NLRB also says workers are okay to unionize. So it's just the processors who are being excluded. Now look for this to be coming to the Supreme Court near you at some point in the next few years. In the meantime, it's time for the DC Report with Vote Pro Podcast, Phil Adams. Phil?
Hi, folks. This is Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast, here with the Weed Talk News DC Report. Isabel Guzman, Joe Biden's nominee to head up the Small Business Administration, offered the Senate committee no promises that the SBA would ensure equal treatment for cannabis businesses. In a meeting of the Senate Committee on Small Businesses and Entrepreneurship, Guzman did say that the agency would look into the problem. Current SBA policy excludes legally operating cannabis companies from access to the same programs and resources available to small businesses in virtually every other industry. These include loans, counseling, COVID and other disaster relief, as well as mentoring and training. Many of Biden's nominations to key posts, including Guzman's, are being closely watched by cannabis industry advocates to see what his picks may signal about his administration's approach to cannabis policy. One member of Congress says he plans to try and include banking protections for cannabis businesses in the next COVID relief package. Democratic Congressman Ed Perlmutter of Colorado wants to add language from the Secure and Fair Enforcement Banking Act to protect banks that serve the cannabis industry. In 2019, Perlmutter sponsored the Safe Banking Act as a standalone bill. The measure passed the House with bipartisan support, but received no Senate consideration. It also advanced twice last year as part of the Democrats' COVID bills, though neither version cleared the Senate. Perlmutter said he would reintroduce the Safe Banking Act as a standalone bill if this latest attempt falls short. More progress toward adult use in Virginia this week as cannabis legalization bills have advanced out of two key committees of the Virginia General Assembly. The Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee passed its version of the bill, while a similar version cleared the Appropriations Committee in the House of Delegates. This comes less than 1 month after Virginia Governor Ralph Northam introduced his adult use legislation proposal. These actions clear the way for full Senate and House floor votes. A recent Christopher Newport University poll shows a significant majority of residents of the Commonwealth, including most Republicans, now favor legalization. That's the Weed Talk News DC report for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Pot.
So, are you looking for a job in cannabis? You might want to tune into the Green Rush Live show on Pro Cannabis Media on Friday, February 5th from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern. David Rabinovitz and I will be talking with Max Simon, the founder of Green Flower, and also with David Belsky, the CEO of Flower Hire. We also have a representative from Johnson and Wales University in Rhode Island to talk about their new curriculum. So there is a leader in cannabis education, a leader in the recruitment for that industry, and many options to look at when it comes to the business of higher level education in cannabis. And of course, if you don't want to watch it live, it's recorded and available on the PCM social media platforms, right?
Well, Jimmy, cannabis employment company Vankst released a report with some encouraging news that more women and minorities are entering the industry. However, we do see that wages for entry-level jobs are only slightly higher than those of entry-level fast food positions. Vankst also predicts that we will see an increase of over 26,000 new jobs by the year 2025. So now let's head to Solomon Israel, who is back from assignment with MJ Biz Daily International for our Canadian report.
I'm Solomon Israel from Marijuana Business Daily International, and this is the Weed Talk News Canadian Cannabis Report. For the first time ever, Canadian sales of legal recreational cannabis have exceeded illicit sales. That's according to new estimates from Statistics Canada, the federal data agency. Spending on recreational cannabis hit 824 million Canadian dollars in the third quarter of 2020, but sales of illegal recreational cannabis were estimated at $754 million in the same period. And marijuana producer TerraSend Canada has recalled more than 330,000 units of THC-infused gummies. A recall notice from Health Canada said the affected products may contain mold. TerraSend Canada told Marijuana Business Daily it issued the recall proactively after receiving complaints from consumers. It's the second mold-related cannabis recall in Canada so far this year. You can read those stories and more at mjbizdaily.com. I'm Solomon Israel for Marijuana Business Daily.
Okay, here's a story that caught my eye, and it's really interesting. Did you know that there is finally a health insurance company that is offering coverage for medical cannabis? Sure enough, it's called Novus. They are introducing a med plan to cover cannabis this year in conjunction with wholesale carrier Elevate Wellness. Novus's plan is approved in all 50 states and will transition to a user-based insurance plan. Something to keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
What are you keeping an eye on, Ryan?
Well, Jimmy, as you know, I will be keeping an eye on the Super Bowl this year and this Sunday, but I'll also be in the clubhouse. So,
what's
Jimmy,
the clubhouse, right? Tell us about Clubhouse.
Well, Clubhouse is a fun new app that is controlled just by your audio. So you get to go around this new application, networking and meeting people from all across the world that have been invited to this platform. It's only available on iOS platforms right now. But what's really exciting is it has allowed for conversations to take place anywhere, much like Zoom, but audio only. And some cannabis professionals have gotten a little creative. And my shameless plug here, Jimmy, I have been working hard with Antonio Harvey, Melissa Stapley, and Sherry Tarr, amazing cannabis industry professionals. And it got a little out of control. Antonio and I made a bet. I knew Tom Brady, he is at home in Tampa Bay and at the Super Bowl, but
That's
we
never
decided,
happened. You know, that's never happened before. Just in
Well-
case you haven't heard that.
and you would know, Jimmy, because we have a kicker that we're going to tell you about in just a second. But this event has been all possible due to Curaleaf here in Maine. So they stepped up. They provided a $1,000 donation to Athletes for Care, which is an organization that is advocating for athletes' access and right to control their wellness and recovery regimens. So something that the leagues have been very strict on. And so some amazing personalities will be joining us. We'll be raising funds for this great occasion. And there'll be celebrities and athletes from all over that will be joining us to help broadcast during the Super Bowl live. The cannabis industry's never been able to participate on a stage like this before. And one last kicker, we have a special guest, one of the most legendary sportscasters I have ever met, joining us at halftime for analysis of the first half of the game. Jimmy, who could that be?
I'll be in the clubhouse with Rye and his friends at halftime of the big game on Sunday. And I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to it. And I think it's really interesting. So you're going to be in the clubhouse talking to a cannabis group of people, pro-cannabis group of people, while watching the Super Bowl with them, right? That's what the clubhouse is about, right?
That's it. We will all be watching the game, taking place in conversation. We're going to have some incredible athletes that will share their professional journeys and why they chose to get involved with an organization like Athletes for Care. Because I saw a great opportunity the other day where a veteran of the NBA was mentoring the son of an ex-NBA player who's just getting ready to enter the league. So people from all walks of life will be here and attending this event.
Who was that? Do I have to put you on the spot?
You will absolutely have to put me on the spot, but Antonio Harvey will be anchoring our team this year.
Okay, fair enough. And I'll know who it is by the time halftime runs around for Super Bowl, and I'll be in that clubhouse. I can't wait to figure out how it works on my iPhone. Anyway, one final note, a very special happy birthday to our video director, Dan French, who is celebrating a birthday today, but not to be outdone because Rye Russell's birthday was just about 24 hours ago from this taping. So a happy birthday to both of you. As far as Dan goes, needless to say, he's one of the most important people on our staff here at PCM because he controls all of our audio and video content. Basically, if he really wanted to, he could cut my microphone right now. But then
we love Dan. He's the best.
He wouldn't be the video director if he did that. So don't do that. And I can't believe you're only 22. That'll do it for another edition of Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm Rye Russell from Weed Buds Radio.
Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And go Tampa.
The Super Bowl.
Go Tampa.
Go Tampa. TV, Tom Brady. Antonio, we're watching you.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first. Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page.